Hi, thank you for joining me at Meta Mentoring. My name is Erin, and I'm so glad you're listening today. I'm going to share with you something that is a little bit technical today. It is how to use feelings and needs to support someone else who is navigating something that feels stuck in them. Maybe I often describe it as feeling like it's knotted. There's lots of feelings and needs, nothing quite feels settled. And when I am trying to sort through it on my own, maybe I'm having a hard time getting at the different layers of what I'm feeling and what I might be needing. So the process I'm going to share with you is a process that was first introduced to me using cards that look like this, paper cards. And now you can buy on Amazon, and this is not my company, but I'm going to do a little plug. You can buy Grok cards, and they come in a children's set, which I have taught to children before. It's really effective, and in an adult set. And you can see that there are feelings cards and there are needs cards. And I'm going to share with you how you can use feelings and needs cards with someone else so that you can support them in trying to understand what they might be feeling and what they might be needing. In this recording, I have my NVC support group working together, and we are supporting Shar in exploring what her feelings and needs are for an issue that felt kind of unsettled for her. I had been looking for an opportunity to record this process because sometimes it's easier to witness it or observe it before you experience it yourself. So I was really excited when Shar messaged and said, "Hey, I've got this issue that is alive in me. I would love some support to unravel it. And it would be a great opportunity to use feelings and needs cards, Grok cards." And I felt excited because she consented to having her experience recorded so that I could share it and other people could learn from it. The downside is I was actually really sick when we did the recording. So hopefully I have caught all of the sounds that may relate to that. If I didn't, my apologies. When you are working with feelings and needs cards, it's really helpful to have someone who has, the issue that they want support in. And then hopefully you have, 2 or 3 other people who have experience working with feelings and needs cards who can offer support to the person who's trying to process this thing that's really challenging for them. So the first step is everyone sort of gets themselves organized. And part of getting myself organized, I like to use the actual physical cards, and I will lay them all out on my desk. So you start with the feelings cards out first, and I will lay all of the feelings cards out on my desk. I'll show you what that looks like. So here you can see I have all of my feelings cards ready to go, and I'm going to pick up the ones that I think I hear Shar expressing. And I was going to do this on my desk, but honestly, my desk isn't big enough to hold all these cards. So you need to make sure that you have a large enough space. If you're using actual cards, you need to make sure that you have a large enough space that you can spread everything out and see it clearly. Once everyone has all of their feelings cards in front of them so that they can look at all of the feelings cards as the speaker is talking, then you want to give instructions or a reminder if you're facilitating that the person who is speaking, they are going to talk about their situation, however long they wish to talk about it. And as they're talking, the people who are supporting the speaker are going to be listening for feelings words. And as you hear a feelings word, you're going to pick up that card. Sometimes we might also think we hear a feeling expressed without using the exact word, and that's okay too. You can also pick up a card that you think maybe you might have heard. Now, not everyone likes to use cards. Some people just like using a feelings and needs list. I know I have done that before too, where I have paper copies of the list, perhaps because I want to be able to give the person a copy of what I have been recording on their behalf. So although I'm talking about using feelings and needs cards or Grok cards, it is also possible to use feelings and needs lists. So Shar starts to say her story, explain what happened. And as she's talking, we are going to be listening for the feelings that we either hear her say directly. And we're also going to be listening for feelings that we think we might hear her say indirectly. Maybe we heard a hint of this, but she didn't use the exact word. So we're listening for any type of feeling that we think she might be expressing. Let's listen and hear what Shar has to say and how the process begins.
Just like a quick background, I work as an EA. Typically, I have a consistent morning student and an afternoon student. I was given this particular afternoon student. It's taken me a long time to get this child to a place where they trust me, where they're not running away from me constantly, and where we're actually vibing and finally like doing some stuff, as opposed to me just trying to keep the peace, keep the safety really. But now we're in a zone where like she trusts me and we can do stuff. Okay. So for the afternoon, I try to have like a little checklist of things that we can do. They're usually pretty preferred. And then she would have like a choice, right? Just to get her into the habit of like, we're going to be doing things other than just running around in the gym all the time. But they're usually preferred activities. So the one preferred activity that I found she really likes, that I thought was useful, was doing like a little snack cart in the kitchen, which is the staff room. So we make some hot chocolate, cut up some cheese, get some crackers. We'll put them together in little cups, and then we push the snack cart along, and she delivers them to her favorite chosen people. Not everyone gets one. um, so what happened? Oh, so I was at a talk on Saturday, which I should mention later because this author is amazing if nobody saw my Facebook post. And a friend of ours mentioned a website called The Accessible Chef that had all these cool little recipes. So I texted my coworker who works with this student in the morning and who this student was extremely attached to. And we've been trying to broaden the student's horizons, right? So that's where I came into the picture. So I sent her the website and I said, look, this is a cool website. Maybe if you guys pick the recipe and get the ingredients, then her and I can do some different recipes in the kitchen, which is a great life skill as well, learning to use the kitchen and make snacks and stuff. So then she says to me, that's fine, as long as it's not during nutrition break or period 5, because there's teachers in there having their breaks. She just said something like that. And I said, okay. And I said, have people expressed to you that they are uncomfortable having us in there? And she said, well, yeah, because that's supposed to be their downtime and their break and their student free time. And I said, okay. And I started to get a little frustrated because I just find, this is very Jackly of me, that sometimes people can be very passive aggressive. And it's like, just say it. Like if you need peace and quiet and you don't want us in there at that time, then tell me. But nobody's told me this. And I have noticed that I get, eye rolls or whatever, but nobody said anything. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I know before we would go in there, then all of a sudden there was a teacher who would start to tell her that she needs to knock before we go in. But they said it to the student, like not to me. And I was like, okay, got it. So you want us to knock before we go in? Okay. But nobody told me this. And it's like, how am I supposed to know? I'm not going to know. I don't know until I know. If you don't tell me, I don't know. And she likes to push this car around, and we would bring it into the staff room. And then the one teacher goes, "Oh, so and so, this doesn't belong in here. We have to leave it out in the hall." And I'm like, first of all, why? Doesn't matter. It's like small and it doesn't take up a lot of room. But second of all, like, why are you being so passive aggressive about it? If you guys have an issue, then talk to me about it. So that's my number one frustrating thing, that it was very roundabout. And if I hadn't have brought it up in this way, it would never have come up. So I'm frustrated about the passive aggressiveness. And it's also like, okay. So then I said to her, I think I said, "Well, thank you for telling me that because I didn't know." So maybe that was passive aggressive of me too. Or maybe it was just like, and then I kind of said, "Well, what do you think about period 6? Like, can we be in there period 6?" Okay, there's not many people in there period 6. Well, then we can't do baking because then that's the end of the day. So then she says, "Well, maybe once a week." And it's like, okay, I can see that once a week. I don't know. It's just frustrating because I feel like, why have I not had this conversation? Like this proper planning conversation. And there's huge value in this child being in the kitchen, learning life skills. I do get it though, because this child can have big feelings and get frustrated. And if teachers are trying to work or gossip, then I don't know. Now I'm being catty, right? But I don't know. It's just frustrating. There's more feelings to it, which I'm sure you guys will figure, but I just felt really okay. So you guys were all talking about this behind my back instead of just saying, "Hey, Shar, you're doing a really good job with so and so, but we would love some peace, period 5. Do you think you could try to blah blah blah?" Like, why is it so difficult for adults? We're adults. um, and I think that's it. I think I'm done.
Once Shar has finished her story and she feels complete in expressing herself, we will clear off our work area and we will have a small collection of cards that are the feelings that we think that Shar expressed. And now Shar is going to have a little piece of paper or her phone, something to record all of the feelings that we're going to reflect back to her. When I first learned how to use these feelings and needs cards in this way, I was taught by an NVC facilitator to make guesses about what the other person might be feeling or needing. So that might sound like, "I wonder if you felt this. I wonder if you were feeling this. I think I heard you express this feeling." So it's making guesses and not really giving a whole lot of explanation around those guesses. However, because this NVC group is so familiar with each other, and I think also as a facilitator, I kind of felt I wasn't totally sure I wanted to hold on to that rule strongly. And so I did not prompt them to only share a guess. I allowed for a lot of space for them to explain why they chose to highlight the feeling that they did, or why that feeling sort of showed up for them when they were listening to Shar explain her scenario. Interestingly, Shar did explain that, you know what, it was really helpful to hear your reasoning behind it. So I thought that was really interesting feedback. Although I had been taught to just make guesses and to keep it really brief, she actually found it to be more helpful to have people relate it back to something specific in the story that she shared. Let's listen as Sonia, Liz, and I reflect back to Shar what we think she might be feeling.
are we wanting the heart of the feeling, or are we wanting to name uh, um, the few that have come up?
I would say let's name them all and let's give Shar the opportunity to decide what is resonating most strongly with her. So let's list everything that we heard or thought maybe.
Okay. I think I just want to emphasize you going into this connection with this girl, and I'll just name the couple that I have just for that. But you went in, you were saying you were building a relationship, and you were feeling that, you were having a relationship with the child, and making some consistency, knowing what works. So I was thinking at the beginning, you had feelings of comfortable. And I think that was something that I really wanted to emphasize at the beginning. You were comfortable, affectionate, and also sensitive as well. Sensitive towards that connection and being comfort in that relationship. And I think that sensitivity built towards later on.
I'll add to that since we're starting there. I also noticed how open you were in terms of oh, actually I shouldn't put words in. I wondered if I heard you expressing openness at the beginning.
Some of the feelings that I kind of picked up on were feeling really encouraged by a lot of the progress that you've made. Like I felt this energy as you were talking, kind of like I'm getting there. And so this optimism, that was the other one I wrote down, optimistic about your progress with the connection and with finding a few things that seem to be working. So feeling that hopefulness. And there was a definite change in energy. So in the beginning, there was quite an enthusiastic energy, I would say. Like it was this optimism, hopefulness, encouraging.
Okay, so again, I want to go back to the sensitivity. The sensitivity, like you mentioned at the beginning of the initial of like, yes, you were feeling proud. Yes, you confirmed you were feeling sensitive because it was also like that, that responsibility. But then the sensitivity now is what I'm going towards is when you got the news from the teachers, which I'm getting the sense of feeling surprised because, you were saying that you did have the connection and it was going well. So I was just wondering if you're feeling surprised. And then again, with that surprise came that sensitivity. And then with that sensitivity, you also mentioned before you were feeling proud. So almost like you're getting a sense of feeling hurt because, I'm wondering if you were feeling there was trust and the way that, the staff are communicating to you. It's almost like there wasn't trust in the sense of how you were going towards doing what was best for this child and the way it was communicated. I'm just wondering if there was a feelings of hurt, which again is connected. I really feel that sensitivity, that hurt felt sense and sensitivity. So I guess that part is almost like a feeling that's almost physically felt as well.
Shar, I wondered if I heard you feeling confused.
So I kind of broke it down into like the different scenarios you were or examples you were giving. And at first, what I started to hear was, yes, the frustration and feeling irked by kind of the situation as a whole. And then getting into more specifics, I got like the feeling of resentment for what you described as like the passive aggressiveness. So that resentfulness, because you were hoping to have clear communication, and an unsettledness because of that. So feeling really uncomfortable and uneasy and unsettled with the lack of communication and the passive aggressiveness.
I just wanted to agree with you too, Liz. I definitely think uncomfortable was a powerful one in this point, because you went going into this connection, working with the new options that were successful, going in comfortable. And then the moment with the communication with the staff, it became uncomfortable. So that feeling that went in that you were sure of comfortable became uncomfortable. Almost gave a feeling of, I'm not the word, don't know the exact word for the feeling, but ungrounded. So I'm just, I would just say, I guess centered, like, so you went in there feeling centered and with your being comfortable, and then now being uncomfortable, you're feeling less centered, I'm wondering.
I'm wondering if I heard you say, or I heard you expressing that you felt embarrassed.
I use lonely, but to describe the similar type of, like, in response to the similar type of thing, like if it was kind of viewed as an us and or them and you, right? Like they're having this conversation amongst themselves, that feeling of loneliness and just kind of like, why wasn't I included in what's going on?
I wanted to add to that. I know we're using your cards, but I'm also looking, Erin, on your site with your feelings. And I think reading this under the sad category and hearing Erin and Liz talk about, ashamed and lonely, I'm wondering too if maybe longing is another one too. The feeling of longing. Again, without going into the need, I'll just say that.
I wondered if you had a feeling of vulnerability.
I wondered if you were feeling disappointed because you expressed that you were hoping to receive some recognition, even for kind of like some of the more positive things that you have been trying to achieve. And so disappointment at not receiving any of that kind of recognition.
I wondered if I heard you expressing, did we say discouraged yet? Okay, discouraged.
The other one I had was just disheartened.
They say with feelings, a lot of the times that anger can be the iceberg of a lot of underlying, as Erin was saying at the beginning of the session, like the heart of the feelings. And you had mentioned the beginning or the end of your story, there was a lot of irritation. So I'm just wondering, underneath that irritation, if there was a feeling of humiliation.
I wondered if you felt anxious. Sure. I wondered if I heard you feeling annoyed. And I think it was already shared about frustrated, but I wanted to couple it with exhaustion. So like I wanted to share the feeling exhausted, but I had it so tightly coupled with frustrated that I wanted to say that word again. Sorry.
The last one I
Yeah.
had was guarded.
There was a temptation while we were doing our feelings, reflecting back our feelings that we thought we heard Shar say, when we were reflecting them back to her, there was a temptation for Shar to expand. And, when we got something right, she wanted to expand on what it was that we got right or that was resonating with her. And I want to hold on to this part of the process a little bit more tightly. When you are reflecting back to the speaker's really just listening and not doing any more verbalization, confirming or not confirming. They're just writing down all of the different feelings that their support group is reflecting back to them. Once everyone has shared all of the feelings that they thought the speaker expressed, then the speaker is going to look over the entire list and pick their top 3 feelings that feel most alive in them. But we do need to narrow it down to sort of like the most important parts of the story. What feelings are most alive? The rest of the support group are going to now use their workspace to lay out all of their needs cards. So I'll show you what that might look like. There are so many needs cards. Once the support group has all of their needs cards out and ready, then the person who is the speaker is going to explain why they have chosen the feelings cards that they did. Why are those feelings most alive for them? And as they're sharing what feelings were most alive for them, what was most important, the people who are doing the support work, they're going to be listening for needs. You're going to be listening for the needs that are underneath those feelings. And as you hear a need, you're going to pick up the card and you're going to hold on to it so that you're creating a separate pile of needs that you think you hear behind the speaker's expression. Now Shar has had an opportunity to hear all of the guesses that we were making about what she might be feeling. And now she is going to try to narrow down that list to her top feeling or feelings. I often ask people to list one feeling or as many as 3, because sometimes it can be hard to narrow it down to 1. And let's listen to what Shar has to say and why she chose the feelings that she did as being the most pertinent, the ones that are most alive for her.
First of all, I'll say that you guys nailed it. And coming into this, I don't think I recognized how deep that feeling was, because I was kind of like, oh, it's an example that's not a big deal and I can just shake it off. But when you really start talking about it, it's like, oh. So I hope I don't cry, actually, because it's very interesting. So the top 3 that I picked sensitivity, and I kind of matched that with vulnerable, because I think that, like somebody said that at the beginning, like I was going in open, and I think when I work, like I try to put my all into it. So when I reached out to this coworker, I just wasn't expecting her response. And I was like excited. So I was in that like open, excited place, like, oh, look at this cool new website, blah, 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 blah. So I would say I was probably feeling sensitive / vulnerable. The second one I chose was hurt, which I was surprised by, because, yeah, I guess it did hurt my feelings to think about that people were discussing things behind my back. And you guys picked up on the fact that like I wasn't part of the group and they were discussing those things. And I was like, yeah, I guess I do kind of feel that way because they're having these conversations and I'm not really part of it. And just in general at school, I don't have my lunch in the staff room. I keep to myself. I don't like to gossip. I don't like to get into any of the drama. So I work right around the corner. So I come home for my lunch. I haven't gone to the staff socials because they're too expensive. And I'm not a very outgoing person. So I guess I haven't really built those relationships. And I probably do feel like a little bit of an outsider because I don't have like anybody close at work. So I think I did feel a bit hurt that they were discussing things without coming to me. And the last one I picked was disheartened, because after you guys kind of clarified what that meant for me, I think again, when I go back to I'm going to take on this challenge and I'm going to be open and I'm going to work hard. And I've been trying so hard and it has been a challenge and there have been tough days. And the fact that I am making ground and building a relationship and I have been feeling proud of myself, and then to get like negative, that sort of negative, not really feedback, but it's just kind of like a stop in my progress. it did hurt my heart a little bit because I would have loved to have heard like, "Oh, that's an amazing website. What an amazing idea. Yeah, we can totally do that." That would have been nice to hear. So I think disheartened because I just felt a little let down, I guess.
Once the speaker has finished expressing what feelings were most important to them, and all of the support team has gathered up the needs cards that they think they heard expressed by the speaker, you're going to clear off the cards that you're not using. And the person who's the speaker is then going to go into listening mode, and they're going to record all of the needs that everyone else thought that they heard the speaker say. And it's the same process as the feelings process. You're making guesses about what you think you heard expressed. So maybe that would sound something like, I wonder if you were wishing for more peace. I wonder if there was a need to matter. Again, I also learned that you don't provide much explanation. You just sort of let those needs sit with the other person because only they know how it will resonate with them. But again, when I didn't prompt my support group earlier, Shar really liked having us give a little bit more reflection and explain why we thought we heard what we did. So I don't know, maybe there's something to not following the rules all the time.
Let's do what we did before, and we'll sort of do a round robin and share the need that you think you might have heard Shar expressing. And Shar, if you could write down all of the needs that we share, and then you'll sort of make your decision at the end after you've had time to reflect.
Just by listening to your three strong feelings there, strongest feelings. I'm making the guess of the need for shared reality. And to have your intentions seen.
I wondered if I heard a need to, these kind of go together, so I'll say them together, but you can put them separate if you want, Shar. A need to matter and belong, and a need for, oh, just sort of sunk in for me. I was going to say a need for inclusion, but the multiple meanings of what that need could be are now sinking in for me. But anyway, I'll say those two together.
So what kind of stuck out to me is what I'm guessing at is a need for tenderness and compassion.
I think when I looked at all my needs, the one that was like boom, with the heartfelt, like that pain of heart. I want to go with dignity.
I wondered if I heard a need for consideration.
I was wondering if I heard a need for celebration.
I'm wondering if there was a need for community.
I wondered if I heard a need for respect.
I'm wondering if I heard a need for clarity.
I'm wondering if I heard the needs for harmony and consideration kind of intertwined.
I wondered if I heard a need for reassurance.
Cooperation and collaboration.
Maybe again, these two are close to me, like of the meanings, but the needs for understanding and acknowledgement, I'm wondering if those were as well.
I wonder if you felt a need for contribution.
I wondered if you felt a need for support.
I'm wondering if the need for competence.
I'm going to piggyback on that one, effectiveness. Is that what you had too, Sonia?
I think the last one I have here is validation.
I'm going to piggyback that one and jump out of turn because I had appreciation. I had one more, which I should have interrupted maybe and piggybacked earlier, but congruence.
Once the speaker has recorded all of the needs that the support group has expressed, Then they're going to look through that list and they're going to pick their top need. So now I would really challenge the person who is the speaker to pick just one. And when you pick just one need and you have it settled, like, yeah, this is the one that's most alive for me, then the speaker shares that aloud with the group and why they chose that need as being most alive for them.
So, as predicted, there are a number of needs that felt fairly strong. I mean, you guys nailed it again. Probably all of these fit somewhere. I would say validation and appreciation is very strong, but when I'm really thinking about it, I don't know that it's my number one. So then I went to matter and belong, which is also very strong. But then again, I don't know if it's the number one. Um, so I think when I'm really thinking about what happened and stuff, I would have to say probably clarity is my number one. Um, because that has been an issue where it's like, what are my boundaries? Are there rules that I'm supposed to know about or follow? I don't know if it's like social rules or just in general about, things like the staff room or other areas where it's like, I would love clarity for the expectations or what. Um, but they definitely all fit. You guys did amazing, but I think probably clarity is number one.
Once they have figured out which of the needs is most important to them, which one feels most alive, then the speaker is invited to say that need aloud to the group. And sometimes people like to have some time to really sit with that need and feel the depth of it before they want to move forward into action. There are other times when, as soon as someone realizes, oh, yeah, that is totally the need that is most alive in me, sometimes they feel really clear on what strategy they want to use to try to meet that need. So it really is very individualistic after that need has been identified. I know it's not even individualistic in terms of, everybody is different. Well, that is true. I would say circumstances also determine your comfort level in choosing a strategy or not. I know for me, there have been lots of times where I've really needed to, marinate in my unmet need for a while and really feel the depth of it before I can identify a strategy that I think might work, considering the circumstances and how that need is being expressed in me. So no pressure about coming up with, what action you might want to take. And if there is no clear answer, no pressure to come up with anything. If you can come up with something, that's awesome, because, you'll feel settled. One of the cool things about using feelings and needs cards with someone else is that, at least I know for me, it actually doesn't matter to me whether I am in the speaker role or if I am in the support role. I actually find both roles to be really connecting and fulfilling. When I have been in the speaker role, it can feel like therapy. So because you are processing aloud and people are just validating what you're saying, it can feel really supportive and caring and nurturing. And you've really slowed down your processing just by following the steps of this feelings and needs detanglement process. And I think that can feel like an exhale. It's funny, my body wanted to show me how it felt. It can feel really gentle. It feels supportive. It tends to bring clarity. And even if you can't solve, the unmet need that maybe is at the root of your feelings, even just having clarity, even just being heard, being validated, that's meeting other needs. Other people see you and hear you and recognize how your needs matter. So just engaging in the process can feel so good. And on the flip side, if you are in the supportive role, hearing someone else express what they're feeling in an honest way, it can help us feel like we are connected. It's nice to play a supportive role and to contribute to someone in that way. And there's also this feeling of validation, when you hear someone else's feelings, or when you recognize, oh, I think I hear that need underneath their expression, that can feel validating because feelings and needs, these are universal human experiences. And when we're hearing someone else express that, it can feel really good to remind us like, yep, this is that feeling. Yeah, this is that need. I've experienced that. So while we're nurturing someone else in a connected way, interconnected way, we're also nurturing ourselves. So this was a bit more of a technical recording. I wanted to share this process of how to use feelings and needs to support someone who was trying to process their own, I keep calling it a knot because that's what it feels like in me. Like there's different layers, it's all tangled up. So I was looking for an example, and I'm so thankful to Shar for offering for our NVC group to support her as she navigated a scenario that felt uncomfortable for her. I hope that you found it useful too. I intend to use this recording and share it with my NVC group, my free group that practices about once a month. If you're interested in joining my group, please check out my website, www.metamentoring.ca, and get on my email list. And if you're on my email list, then you will find out about how to join my free NVC practice group. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Again, this was a bit more of a technical recording, but I appreciate you listening and hopefully it will be of use to you. Okay, bye.
I like how Shar said she reflected on some of the needs and was like, okay, yes, I'm feeling that, like I'm, but it's not a primary one. Because I think sometimes it's helpful to have those reminders that, yeah, sometimes it can be as like simple as clarity.
In my head, as I was listening to her at the beginning, I was picking out my feelings and I found myself hearing that need for clarity. And I'm like, oh, don't go there yet, Erin.
Mm,
And then when we were looking at the cards for needs, I didn't feel it as strong that time.
mhm,
And you were the one who said it, and I pulled it. I had it in my pile too. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that one was as strong. And
mhm,
so I think that's what's so cool about this process is the person is reflecting on their own stuff. And like we can't really tell what the other person where they're going to land, what they say, and then when it's reflected back to them, they might interact with it differently and something else might come out.
absolutely. Well, and the other thing is sometimes I think when you're trying to identify the feeling or the need, like it can become so murky that even if it is something like, clarity or like something kind of like that, that can get lost and kind of put to the side, almost kind of like it how it did, right? With you had that selected because there's so many other like almost secondary, like there or just feelings and needs, but maybe that aren't as strong. So I can see how then it can become so muddy to try and sort through which one. And then the other interesting part is the taking action part, or like the reflecting on trying to figure out, okay, so now that I've identified, because what I would do with clarity might be very different from what I would do with like validation, right? Those are, I would take different kind of course, different action for both of those things, right? So I think that's why it's also important to try and weed out those needs.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, the action part, because sometimes we're not always clear on like sometimes you go through this process and you sort of have clarity in the process and suddenly you're like, oh, this is what I'm really needing. But sometimes you need to sit with that for a bit
Mm-hmm.
before and like feel the need and feel all of this like enjoy that moment of recognition, like, oh yeah, that is so important to me, before you can move into a space of action. And I guess that's why I felt curious if she felt it right away, because
Mhm.
for me, as an outsider, I was like, oh, I know where I would go with this next. And with the shame one, I wouldn't go
Mhm.
anywhere. I don't know that I would have the energy or desire to like interact with someone who's kind of using shaming tactics. I just might
Right.
not have the energy for that. But if it's someone that I'm feeling really neutral with or curious, or she said, expressing, what did she say? Expressing the need for clarity. And I thought, she might need to be more specific with people, and like her need for clarity. I don't know if this is okay with you, like, because otherwise it feels too broad maybe for people to understand what her need for clarity is. Like she might have to have her request be very specific,
Mm,
for people to understand how to help meet that need. Oh, the different ways to express. So when we were doing the feelings cards, um, I have been taught that the way you do it is just, I wonder if I hear you feeling this, or I wonder if this is something that's
Mm.
important to you, if it's the needs. Um, and I I don't know if it's like me not wanting to follow the rules,
mhm,
or I see the value in, um, like if you guys felt a need to explain, I don't know if that's part of your getting clarity or expressing yourself or helping her to understand you. You know what I mean? Like there's something
mhm.
going on there. I don't, as an outsider observing, I don't fully know what that is. And it was really cool for me that Shar mentioned that and gave some feedback on that, that she really liked, that when you said a feeling, and you gave some explanation, then she was like, oh, I see how that fits now.
Mm.
Because I don't know if you hadn't done that explanation, I don't know if she would have done that. And that was a neat observation for me, because as I said, when I was taught how to do this, um, it was without explanation.
And it's so interesting that you say that because, yeah, like as I was listening to her, I guess because I'm such a visual learner, right? I had kind of my like chart almost of like what she was talking about. I kind of broke them down, and then I had like kind of arrows and stuff going towards like the things that I was drawn to with like the specific kind of explanation she was getting into. And then I had like my overall general one. And so I think that's also why at times when like towards the end when I was sharing some of the examples, I was thinking like when I was saying compassion, for example, the compassion was more for the piece where she was saying, that she she doesn't go into the staff room for lunch. She kind of goes home and, not going to the staff outings and whatever it was, right? Like that's kind of why I chose compassion. So I had a lot of those where it was like I had specific needs, but they were like targeting specific things that were said. So it's interesting because then also sometimes just hearing the need in and of itself, they can apply that to whatever it is that they have felt, if they felt it, right? And so I like both ways. I thought it was really neat that we had like both ways kind of going back and forth.
And I was thinking about that when we were in the middle of it, and I thought, should I explain the way I was taught? Should I, and like I said, I'm really glad that Shar actually mentioned that she liked having the explanations, because that just, I don't know. It was validating for me, because I actually felt I felt torn in the moment, like, do I stop and show the way that I was taught how to do grok, or do I let the process flow and trust that there's, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Meaning in our process, even if it's
Mhm.
not matching up to however it was intended or designed or whatever. I noticed that after we said the feelings, and she was expressing which feelings were most important, and we were listening to her needs, I noticed that her needs, like after that slowed down reflection of what her feelings were, her needs seemed to go into a deeper layer.
Mm,
So if she hadn't done the feelings, listening, reflecting, like we slowed down the whole process. Or using these cards, it slows down the whole process. And I think it does help get to other layers. Um, and she sort of said this too, like if she had just been talking about it,
mm.
she just might have stayed at one layer, but by us listening, reflecting back, her reflecting on what we said, like we went in some different directions that turned out to be really important to her.
Well, and it's interesting because in the beginning she kept using the words like irritated or
Frustrated.
frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that by the end, those weren't the ones that she actually decided kind of felt right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think of where that would have gone if they hadn't been explored further.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so valuable about the process is that the process in and of itself, even if no action really comes from it,
Mhm.
I think the process is like so valuable because it's so revealing. And so even if like the action afterwards is just to kind of feel those feelings and grieve
Yes.
those needs, that is so valuable.
Yeah. And actually, that was one of the last points that I wanted to say, um, or reflect on with you was when I was thinking about, she highlighted these three needs. And I thought if the matter and belong need came up and I were to ask her, like, what sort of action do you feel like taking? In my mind, that one is actually just like that one goes into the branch of the internal empathy, like grieving this deep need for matter and belonging. Because I don't like that one's a really hard one to express to people how
Mhm.
they would meet your need. Like, I don't even know how I would want that met by people. Like, I don't know what strategy I would suggest to people that would take a lot of reflecting. Maybe I could come up with something, but I'm also thinking, like the action comes, or at least the getting curious, do I feel pulled in a direction yet? And I think just like when I was trying to sort through what happened on the trip to BC in the grocery store, and I needed to like spend lots of time swirling around and reflecting and like feeling my stuff and the needs. And then once I'd done enough of that, then it felt easy.
Mm,
And so I like when Shard didn't quite know what to do with it, like sometimes people don't know what to do with it because it's hard to know how to express our needs. Like what strategy do we want to start with or request of other people? That's a challenging skill in itself. But then sometimes we're just not ready to go there yet. We need more time to like feel settled and at peace with what we're feeling and what we're needing. And yeah.
well, that's
Yeah.
what was cool actually is in the end when you um gave her a few suggestions, one of them being, did she want to receive more empathy or did she want to receive like did she want some relatable experiences, like because sometimes after kind of getting to the root of something, it's like I don't know what what I need. So sometimes even hearing those things, it's like, oh, you know what, sure, yeah, I would like to hear a relatable story, even if it's not necessarily like an action in the sense that like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
It could be what's kind of needed to fulfill that need for maybe connection or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really it
Mm,
caused me to kind of think of what I can offer following something like that, where it's like I can't make them clear, right? I can't meet that need for you, but if there's any of these um suggestions that I could help with or I could be there for.
yeah. And that reminds me, I want to draw on parenting and kid examples because that's I guess just where a lot of my work experience falls, but like sometimes people know right away what they want to do. Like once they get the clarity, it all goes really quick for them. And then other times, yeah, we feel like we're at a loss of, like I have no idea where to begin. I have no idea how to approach this. And I mean, even when I was trying to explain how to have that conversation with a coworker who might be in a staff room during their break, I really fumbled through that. That was not as NVC as I would have liked, but that's okay. The idea is getting clarity on that. Like if there's action, what action feels right, and trying on different ones um,
And
can
sometimes the
feel
action is,
supportive.
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the action of even doing the process again, because sometimes it can bring up, like, I think the recognition of some of the feelings and needs can sometimes bring up another layer of feelings and needs. And it's like, that's another thing that I find so valuable about it is it's like, okay, well, I have all these now new kind of insights, and that can bring up more kind of murkiness, but then to be able to do it again, and even if it's just like a self-reflection kind of going over it, right, and trying to like pinpoint, going even deeper, I guess, like I think of like those roots and like just going in deep and trying to kind of get at the core of some things can be really really liberating
Mhm,
and painful,
mhm.
right, but like it can also be very liberating because there's this like groundedness, I guess, sometimes, like at least in feeling that self discovery, I guess, or that self assuredness in this one particular aspect. It's
I think it's called NVC dance floor. It's basically this idea that like once you have one layer of feelings and needs, then um, then you can go into like a new layer of reflection. And I think that's what you're talking about. Like I'm picturing Shar, and after she has this need for clarity, and then like what's she feeling now that she has this need for clarity, and I'm trying to picture what Shar might be feeling, and I put myself into her shoes and I'm like, I actually think I go back into the other needs of like I feel insecure all over again because I'm needing this clarity, and it's this ongoing thing and I don't know how to get it. Like you might cycle back into some of the same stuff, which is why, several needs come up. It's usually not just one need standing alone waving its flag.
right.
Like yeah, there are lots of needs and we might cycle back in and out of them. And so yeah, you're right. Going back and like, what am I feeling now that I think clarity is most important. That's a great point that you might want to go through the whole process again and reflect some more in the same way.
Like watching other people go through it and then doing it yourself. It's like there's so many,
Oh,
like it's just there's something so valuable about watching the process. And I don't know, just going through it and getting that like kind of that muscle memory almost of like, all right, let me try and identify some of these feelings and then some of these needs and the types of conversations that come out of those. It's just, I find it so helpful because I find often like it's happening for me so internally
yeah.
that it's nice to see it literally splayed out in front of me, and to actually do my like connecting of things and my arrows and my, because I find it almost like bridges sometimes when it's in my head. That's great and all, but it's nice to have it in front of me too.
Up another good point that I actually hadn't thought of, so I'm glad that we had this long conversation afterwards. That this process, it feels good to receive. So Shar was saying, she felt emotional. She thought she might cry. Like often people feel like this process feels like therapy, right? Because you're having your own feelings and needs reflected back to you. And just that can feel so validating. And um, but then also it feels really good to um, for us to practice, for the people who are making the guesses. It feels really good to be able to practice and stretch ourselves and learn and grow that way. And it also feels really good to feel like we're contributing,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
to giving her a sense of peace. And in her sharing and us receiving, like I feel connected to her, like I feel
Mhm.
warmth and love and compassion towards her. And so that feels good to have it too. And so I think that's kind of the neat thing about this process is that no matter what your role is in it, it feels really good.
Absolutely. Yes.